What's up folks, Crush SG back with an analysis of what seems to be a completely speculative and hypothetical weapon. The goal of this video is to explore what kind of numbers a character like Zhongli would put out with such a weapon. No fancy screenshots today, we're just speculating after all, right? Let's dive straight into it. So the weapon we'll be analyzing today has the following speculated stats. It's a 5-star polearm, has 608 base attack and 66.2% crit damage at level 90, and its R1 bonus is as follows. It increases HP by 20% and provides an attack bonus based on 0.8% of the wielder's max HP. If the wielder has less than 50% HP, this bonus is further increased by 1% of max HP. Right off the bat, just looking at these stats, I can say with pretty high certainty that this would be the best in slot support weapon for Zhongli regardless of what support role you have him in. That being said, I'm not sure how I feel about the second part of the bonus. It doesn't seem practical to keep yourself below 50% HP at all times. For Zhongli as a carry though, that's going to take some number crunching to determine. So followers of my channel probably remember this video where I discussed the official announcement of the potential buff coming to Zhongli in 1.3. What I did for today's video was use the same spreadsheet template, add more details to it, update it to my current Zhongli stats, and applied the stats and bonuses from this polearm to the spreadsheet. And here's what we have. Don't worry, I'll summarize it shortly, just showing my work so you have an idea of how I got these numbers. As always, we have level 90 stats, level 6 skill modifiers across the board, using the same gear across all builds, just swapping the main stats and the necessary set bonuses. Then I did some golden ratio crit optimizations to standardize the average damage values across the board. I then calculated non-crit damage, crit damage, and took the average damage per hit, factoring in crit rate. I also completely ignored the second half of this weapon's bonus for reasons I explained earlier, so all calculations only take the first half into consideration. Breaking the builds down, attack gear refers to full attack DPS gear with % attack on the timepiece, crit stat on the hit piece, and geo damage on the goblet. HP DPS gear refers to full DPS gear with % HP on the timepiece, crit stat on the hit piece, and a geo damage goblet. Full HP gear refers to % HP on all 3 pieces. Now doing away with the unnecessary numbers, this is what we are left with. For support Zhongli, we are looking at some very respectable damage numbers across the board. However, this weapon changes how the builds rank. In my buff breakdown video, I stated that even with the buffs, Zhongli would still scale better for damage with a full attack build. With this new polearm, we now see that HP DPS gear provides the most overall damage output, and this isn't entirely surprising. Zhongli's inherent HP scaling with the buffs adds flat values to all his damage sources. This is more of a pseudo-scaling mechanic. The bonus on this polearm, on the other hand, scales HP to sheet attack, which is scaling in its purest form, effectively giving HP an actual attack value. And I also did the R5 calculations for those interested. Here they are. Now for those looking at more of a compromise build where you want to build more HP for shield strength but don't know which piece to give up between the crit stats on your hit piece and the geo damage on the goblet, I mathed that out too. Now assuming you're still able to maintain a decent crit rate to crit damage ratio, it looks like using a geo goblet is better than using a crit hit piece, if you had to choose between the two. Moving on to the carry builds, I picked 4-piece Bowlight as a set of choice and I hope that's a decent pick. I don't personally run Zhongli as a carry, so I don't know what the best in slot artifact combinations are. Bowlight just seemed like the logical choice. I also gave him a physical damage goblet. From this we can see that it's quite a toss-up between full attack gear and HP DPS gear. It looks like it comes down to whether you use his charge attacks and how often you do. That being said, based purely on just these numbers, I'd personally still pick HP DPS gear, because it's just more balanced. And of course, I also mathed out the R5 figures for the carry builds. Here they are. Now while we're at it, I also did comparisons between the currently available 5-star polearms for the carry builds. I excluded the Skyward Spine from this because it simply requires too much math to quantify. Though if the Skyward Pride is remotely anything to go by, I'm pretty sure the Skyward Spine is at least competitive with all these other 5 stars. Anyway, we have the Primordial Jadewing Spear on the left, the new polearm in the middle, and the Vortex Vanquisher on the right. And sitting up top, we have the new polearm, edging out the Jade Spear ever so slightly across the board. Though I might call it close enough to be within margins of error because this could honestly go either way depending on your specific stats. One weapon gives crit damage, the other one gives crit rate. And of course, unsurprisingly, in third, we have the Vortex Vanquisher. Now I know a lot of you have asked for my thoughts on this weapon, and my conclusion here is pretty much the same as what I concluded in my earlier video talking about the Unforged Claymore. These shield weapons basically have the same downside inherent to the Wolf's Gravestone Claymore. Nothing but percent attack and more percent attack, and having too much of a single DPS stat diminishes its value beyond a certain point. Now this is not to say that these weapons are bad in any way. They are still extremely good weapons and are very competitive in general. And as you can see, the differences between these weapons aren't that big at all. So really, be happy to have any of these weapons and use whichever you have available to you. And of course, here are the R5 figures for the same builds. Alright, so that's all the math I did for this weapon, folks. Here are my closing thoughts. Overall, I think this polearm would be great if it existed in the game. Its bonus mechanic looks to be designed to provide excellent scaling with HP-based characters because it directly addresses the problem of split scaling that so many characters have. If this is a hypothetical precedent for things to come, I do hope they introduce similar options for defense-based characters sometime down the road. For Zhongli specifically, as mentioned at the start, I think this would possibly be the best in slot choice for any support build Zhongli. Aside from the suboptimal second part of the bonus, it provides all its value just by equipping it. It doesn't require any action to stack its bonus like most other polearms do, and it doesn't have any on-field specific mechanics. Of course, the main underlying point here is once again, if the weapon were in the game and if it had these exact stats. We don't know what the future holds, so huge grain of salt here, folks. We're just speculating. As for Hu Tao, I've heard whispers that she is a HP scaling unit as well, but it's still early days and we just don't know enough about her kit yet, so I'll revisit her at a later date. Anyway, that's a wrap for today, folks. As always, thumbs up if you liked it, down if you didn't, crush that subscribe button, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.